Now let's tune in as Michael, a client known as a love slave, goes to visit his dominatrix, who is Mistress Jacqueline.
Well, thanks, Bob, for the great introduction. My relationship with Mistress Jacqueline began about 3 years ago when I did go to see her on a professional basis as a client. I became quite taken for obvious reasons. We corresponded, we called one another, went back to California, she came to New York. The relationship grew, and I found myself falling in love with her, completely in love with her. Having submissive erotic fantasies, where she was coming from, I could relate to, and well, the relationship just built up from there until I made a decision to be quite committed to her and dedicated to her. I'd like to just kind of remark about the a little nervous, forgive me.
Something that we touched on before?
No, it's the misconception that exists in this whole thing. You see, my relationship with Mistress Jacqueline is a very loving relationship. It's a relationship of love, devotion, tenderness, sacrifice, surrender.
On your part?
On my part. Of course, there's the fantasy element, which does involve maybe some bondage, some whips, some chains, but this part is the sort of the erotic part of it. What many people associate with S&M is violence, brutality, rape, mutilation, and this is really not the scene at all. We're very loving, we're very caring. It's a matter of mutual consent, and it's exciting and thrilling, and probably better than I've ever experienced erotically than my 10 years of marriage, in all due respect to my ex-wife.
Well, you're carrying out a fantasy in some respects that you're still a little boy, aren't you?
No, I'm not into that. She touched on infantilism. That's not at all.
Well, if you're submissive. Submissive as what? Submissive as a stud? No,
well,
hardly.
Submissive as a captive. I mean, that could be a fantasy.
That's a fantasy, or it could be a servant, a loving servant. There is some reparenting involved in that, not necessarily with Michael, but I think with some of my slaves, loving discipline as opposed to abusive discipline.
If Michael is a good boy, do you reward him by spanking him?
Sometimes, yeah, because that's my pleasure. I do what I want to with him, and if it's my pleasure to spank him, in other words, I don't punish him out of anger. If I was very angry at Michael, probably the worst thing that could happen, and what I would do is ignore him, because I would never discipline him out of anger. I would never do that. That's called abuse. We play. We're playing. It's all about having fun. And that's really, I guess, my major message. I mean, I'm out of the closet. I've been into the scene now for outwardly 8 years. I've had a great time here, and I know that there are people who are listening right now who have some things inside of them that they'd love to do, but they're afraid to express it to their partners. And oftentimes they're justified in that because their partners don't take it seriously or feel frightened by it. But I really hope that people can see this as a new form of sensuality, sexuality, especially in an age where we have communicable diseases. This is a very safe way to play. Even couples can interact safely here without really getting down and exchanging body fluids, you know?
Make it sound so clinical.
Do I?
Exchanging body fluids. I thought we were through with that phrase.
I didn't want to say AIDS on the air, that's why. So that's why.
Oh, well, what about you, though? Can't you relate to a man normally? Do you have to have this dominating role?
Forgive me for interjecting, but when you say relate to a man normally...
You didn't ask permission to...
I'm sorry, but I had
ask permission, Michael.
With your permission, mistress, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. It's the fact that already you're labeling us, you know, don't you have normal sex or relate to a man normally, which, of course, infers that what we are doing is abnormal.
Yeah.
We really don't consider it abnormal because It is loving, it is caring, and I don't think it's any more abnormal than people who
Do you
fervently...
think she cares for you, Michael?
Yes, I think she does.
Only because you're submissive, right?
No, because he's also a good friend to me. He's actually I really do care for Michael. Even if we did the scene, Michael and I would be friends. Michael is somebody that I know I can count on in life, and there's not that many people out there that I feel that way about. He's a good friend.
On WABC, we're going to go to the telephones and let's say hello to Frank checking in from the car. Here we have Frank. Have you ever talked to a dominatrix before, Frank? Hello, Frank. Are you there? Frank is not there. All right, let's try John. John, are you there? Hello.
Yes.
Would you put your earphones on, please, so that Roy will stop doing that dance in the control room?
How do we do that?
How come you didn't line her up with... You know, why is it we do this all the time? We have a guest, we don't get the...
What is...
You're not going to find earphones in a microphone there. Okay. Well, she doesn't know, Roy. She doesn't know. Why wasn't she told beforehand? Okay. All right. Are you there, John?
Yes. First of all, I'm a medical student and also a therapist. I'd like to ask the submissive one or two questions if it's possible.
All right. That's Michael.
Okay, sure.
Two things. I don't know how personal you'd wish to get on the air, but do you mind if I ask you just three questions?
Don't you dare ask him, do you mind? You just ask. That's what he's here for. He wouldn't be going on a public radio station if he minded.
Well, I have a certain order of politeness. Could I ask you why the dissolution of your marriage took place?
Well, to respond to that, it's an awfully long story, but to try and make it short and brief, the erotic part did disintegrate, mainly because there wasn't the imagination of the fantasy. There were other problems as well, but I think when one's sex life becomes stale and bored, it's the end of your marriage.
That was the only component that failed in your marriage?
No, I'm not saying that's the only component, but that was a major component.
And did you ever undergo therapeutic counseling for any of this?
You know, Frank, or rather John, you make it sound like Michael is the only guy in the history of human divorced.
No, not at all. I just was interested in it.
Yeah. To answer your question, I did go to therapy. I went to Mistress Jacqueline, and I became very well adjusted again.
Well, to make her seem like some clinical professional in your professional relationship, which is also illegal, by the way.
No, it's not
illegal. Baby. No.
It's not illegal.
I'm not your baby, madam.
But you'd like to be.
They're not doing anything illegal, pal. It may be bizarre, but it's not illegal.
Because often related to this type of behavior is some sort of sexual identity crisis, usually related to some kind of gender disorder.
Here's a guy who's read a self-help book.
No, he's a medical student. Big deal.
You're operating on a very superficial level.
No, actually, there's a lot of cases of belonging. When you were younger, you might have had trouble identifying yourself as a male, and you acted submissive to a woman. And I sincerely hope you get counseling because it's a very missing part of your life.
Listen, I'm more fulfilled now than I've ever been in my life. I feel a lot more complete, a lot more tranquil, and at peace with myself, too, for that matter. Because
I think you need a trip to my dungeon, darling.
I think that repressing your feelings, especially your erotic feelings, as long as they're not harmful to anyone, repressing them is far worse and can cause a lot more trouble psychologically
in expressing that. That's a psychology notion from the 60s. Which
well, why don't you go back to school and learn something?
All right, John, you're a nice guy, but guess what? You're boring. Thank you, John. All right, that's in our studio here. She is the author of Whips and Kisses, Parting the Leather Curtain. Why did you decide to go public like this? Because it's good for business?
No, absolutely not. I decided to go public like this for real humanitarian reasons.
Humanitarian?
No, it's true, I did. I knew what it was like to feel closeted for many, many years of my life, to feel that I was wrong or different. I felt guilty about my fantasies, and when I finally
What were your fantasies that made you feel guilty?
Having bondage kind of fantasies makes one feel different. I guess it's probably what gay or lesbian people felt like 20, 30 years ago. I was different. I didn't know how to tell my boyfriends what I wanted, what I liked. I tried to tell therapists, and they said they didn't understand it. And when I finally did enact my fantasies, not only did I love it, but I felt really relieved by it. I felt really relieved. And then I met lots of other people, and the more that I was into the scene, the more I saw I certainly wasn't alone, and I felt like they needed a spokesperson, and I'm it.
I'm sure you don't think of yourself as a prostitute. How would you say you differ from a prostitute in view of the fact that you charge for what amounts to a sexual service?
That's true, but I don't have sex or sexual contact with my clients, so that differentiates me from a prostitute.
Yet in reading Dr. Eustace Chesser's book on a whole array of sexual proclivities, sexual deviations, he says that a person who is into this has an orgasm. So how do these orgasms come about? Spontaneously or what?
I don't know what book you're reading. I don't know. I'm not familiar with him. Dr.
All right.
Stoller
well, you're familiar with this. Forget about Dr. Chesser. You're familiar with the subject.
Yeah.
Don't your clients get that? Don't they come to a climax?
I am not in the service for providing sexual services. They get their fantasy from me. What they do on their own time is up to them.
On their own time?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to the love slave, Michael. What about it? What?
He's a different story anyway.
Okay, what gratification do you get out of this?
Well, as I mentioned before, my relationship with Mistress Jacqueline has developed into a very loving relationship. And it's fulfilling to do things for somebody you love without expectation of remuneration or reward.
Nobody was talking about remuneration. Do you have any kind of sexual gratification out of this?
Well,
you used the word erotic in the beginning. I didn't use it. Yeah. You used it.
Yeah, fine. No, because it definitely is erotic.
I mean, suddenly I feel that I'm surrounded by two people who aren't as forthcoming as I thought they were going to be. Suddenly you clam up. Why?
We're not clamming up.
Frankly, you're asking rather intimate questions. That,
well, what the heck is this whole subject if not intimate? Hey, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look.
Here you tell us what you do, which is a deviation. I'm not condemning you.
Wait a second. We don't think we're doing a deviation.
Oh, really? It's not a deviation?
I don't think
so.
No,
listen.
What do you do? You might be wearing panties underneath that suit right now, for all I know, honey. I don't know. Well, I'm just telling you what it is and what I do and the people that I come in contact with. As far as Michael's sexual gratification, he gets it if I want him to. You see, it's different. Michael is my property. He's my real slave. He's not a client that comes to me. That's why I tried to ask you the difference between...
But the poor schnook says he's in love with you.
The poor schnook, I really don't think of him as a poor schnook. I think of him as a very valuable slave, a very valuable possession. Yes.
This isn't a normal relationship between a man and a woman. One's a slave, the other's a mistress.
Actually, if you could have the affection and love and tenderness and care from a woman like Mistress Jacqueline, I don't think anybody would be a poor schnook.
You can't even call her by her name. You got to call her Mistress Jacqueline.
That's right. That's part of it.
Ah, dear me. Frank, you're on WABC.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to share the fact that I was a love slave for about a year. And it was probably the most satisfying time in my life.
All right.
Bravo, so satisfying. Why did you stop?
Well, I didn't really stop. She went straight, and she got married.
She went straight. Interesting choice of words.
Well, she did, and she got married. But
and she was the only one? You couldn't find another one?
Well, it's hard to go around looking for it, especially when you're a slave. Yeah. You really are, are the recipients. They come and look for you. I mean, she found me. But I think, as far as being a slave and being dominated, I think the one who probably really needs to be dominated would be Fred Winehouse, the general manager, getting rid of Jay Diamond.
WABC, and with that he hung up as though he said something so naughty. You see how immature he is. And
actually, he did strike at a point. If I might elaborate a little bit about finding somebody, it's not all that easy. There are a lot of professional dominatrixes out there.
But you don't want a professional.
But to find somebody that you can really have a rapport with, to develop an ongoing relationship, that's something that is not that easy to find. In fact, throughout my life, I guess I've been looking for something like this, and not until I met Mistress Jacqueline.
Andy, you're on WABC. Good afternoon.
Hi, Bob. I want to ask Michael a question. At what age did he find out that he got pleasure from getting spanked and all that other stuff?
Probably when he was first spanked as a 2-year-old. I don't know.
No, actually, I was not spanked or abused. I came out of a very traditional, conventional family, If anything, there wasn't discipline at all. But to answer your question, as long as I can remember, even when I was a child and before I even understood the psychosexual dynamics of it, I was turned on by fantasies of submission and bondage.
So at what time did you start getting these fantasies and stuff?
I told you when I was a child, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old.
And you never thought like there was something wrong with you? You never like went to a psychiatrist?
Does a 5 or 6-year-old know what's right or wrong? Come on, Frank, give me a break.
And
it isn't a question of right or wrong. We're not talking about right or wrong. We're talking about unusual versus the usual.
Because it is unusual, you know. I mean, you can't even speak unless she gives you permission, and she's spanking you, all this. You don't think there's like something wrong with you? Like
actually, no, I don't, because I have
you actually get.
I think there's something right with him, honey.
You actually get pleasure out of getting spanked.
You see, your questions show that you really are not very familiar with the scene, and what I would suggest is if you have any type of feelings like that whatsoever, express yourself, try it, and maybe you'll find out. If you don't like it, then you don't like it. You walk away from it.
Frank, I bet you'd love to lay over my knee right now. I bet you'd love to have me pull down your pants and give you the hottest spanking of your life. So don't knock it,
I don't
baby.
think so, sweetheart.
I do, honey.
Bob, this show is great. Have more shows like this. But these people are really... Hey, I say to each his own, you know, if this is what turns you on in the privacy of your home, hey, spank it.
What turns you on, Andy?
That doesn't turn me on, Bob.
I asked you what turns you on. What?
I mean, good lovemaking. You know, I'm not into that spanking.
Using a euphemism, lovemaking. Where are you from, Andy?
I'm from Brooklyn.
No, I mean prior to your arrival in Brooklyn.
From the island.
Goodbye, Andy. Let's try Ted checking in here on WABC. Ted calling from his car. Yes, Ted.
Bob, first of all, I can't believe you're giving these Looney Tunes a form.
I'm sorry, Ted, but the quality of the contact is so poor. I didn't do that because of the absurd statement he made. You know, I have to laugh. I've been doing this program for 21 years in this city, and every now and then we do interviews like this, and I always get some jerk like that who says, I can't believe you're giving them time. But they're listening and going,
Exactly.
Yes,
yeah, what
absolutely.
I hate hypocrites. That's the thing I hate worse than anything. Let's try, who do we have here? Somebody who calls himself Shane.
Yeah, Bob, I got to...
Did Alan Ladd play you in the motion picture?
Yeah, exactly. I got to agree with John, the second caller.
Where are you from, Shane?
I happen to feel that Michael has identity crisis.
I can't take... he's that phony, Roy. You know, that phony that keeps... We got a guy that keeps calling... Anyway, I won't bother you with that. Let's try David from Brooklyn. Hello, David.
Yes, good afternoon, Bob. I think we all have an imagination, but, you know, we carry this so far as to say that, you know, this is probably our fantasy.
Right.
Right, but anyway, I think that if we carry this too far, in other words, we allow the body to take over, you know, to take control over the mind. And what this does is usually, you know, leads to degradation.
How can the body take over the
Yeah,
mind?
I know. I was going to say that.
What kind of talk is that?
The imagination is part of your mind, man.
And who says it's degrading? Haven't you ever played with a girlfriend of yours, taken some silk scarves, tied her to the bed, and very erotically had sex with her? That's fun, huh?
Yeah,
use your imagination. You sound like a sexy guy. Come on.
Yeah, but some people carry that too far.
Well, some people carry everything
What do you mean by too
anyway,
far?
What I wanted to say was that some of the greatest people we find are able to take control of their body. You know, they're able to overcome those thoughts. And
why should you overcome these thoughts? What's wrong with them? You sound like you got a lot of guilt.
No, yeah, that's true. You know, because I sometimes
well, get free. Exercise your guilt. Get free. Enjoy yourself. You only have one life.
David, I want you to make a good act of contrition. Say 5 Hail Marys and 5 Our Fathers, and beg for forgiveness for listening to this program. And the next time you feel aroused, do like the Boy Scout manual says, take a cool hip bath.
Yeah, I find sometimes that is a lot more gratifying.
And don't look at yourself in the mirror if you should be disrobed.
And by all means, don't touch yourself. You know where.
All right, thank you. It's pathetic. One of these, by the way, is girl-on-girl, a girl-girl scene. Seduced into Submission, The Night Temptress, The Sensual Dominatrix, Wake Up Call, 1 and 2, and she's even importuned me while the commercial was being aired. Could I give my 800 number?
It's a 900.
Are you going to sell any popcorn in between phone calls?
No popcorn, but if people would like to know more about me and would like to explore their fantasies in a very safe, this is the safest, cheapest way you can do it, do call 970-5552. That's 970-5552 in the 212-718-914 or 516 area code, just the New York area, 970-5552 for such hot topics as slave training, spanking, discipline, fantasies, fetishes, everything that you'll want at only $3.50 a call. So that's 970-5552. I had
You're doing a commercial. So you folks who are getting all nervous because you think we have a weirdo here, she's not weird at all. She's a very commercial person, and she's out to make a buck, and she knows that there are a lot of you sickolas out there that will pay $3.50 to get your jollies over the phone.
Well, that's
I think that's got to be the dumbest thing in the world. A guy picks up the phone and has a fantasy, and you go,
No, I don't.
So
my line
stupid.
is very, very well written. Yeah. I don't just go, although I can do that. But I actually give real slave training lessons.
No, hey, look,
I explore different things like fantasies and
You're taking advantage of the fact that you have a lot of immature clods out there. Michael is a nice guy, but Michael is immature. He's a victim of arrested development.
I don't think so, and I resent having my clients say that.
I was married for 10 years. I've got children. I come out from a very traditional family. I feel quite well-adjusted. And
so you were married and you had children, and that means that you're okay now.
I'd hate to tell you who some of my immature clods are.
It sort of fits into the general concept of normality, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, but the point I want to make here is that this is a commercial broad right here. This broad is a walking, talking commercial. Every move she makes is commercial.
No, that's not true. I'm also part of the scene. I tried to explain. I said this 3 times now, that there is a commercial scene and a non-commercial scene. Every part of my
commercial
I'm
scene.
in both.
She's in both.
I'm in both.
I see.
Even when I'm not being paid to do sessions,
your vocation
I'm there.
And avocation.
Yeah, I love it. If you read my book, Whips and Kisses, you'll see that I'm for real, that I really did have fantasies, that I really did come out of the closet. I really opened up myself a lot in that book. Everything that you read in that book is true. There's a lot of pain in that book.
Now
so
you
I would really hate for you to judge me here without really meeting me.
You stood up a little while ago. We have some young, probably virginal males in there, and you showed your body to them. You really didn't show much because you don't really have much to show.
Darling, that is really
that
not
sounds like
right.
a challenge, Bob.
No, really, you don't have much to show.
Look at these tits. Come on, look at them right now. These are very nice, big tits. I don't think that this is, I'm little and I'm petite, but isn't that the fun idea? This little girl can tie up these big, strong muscle men. Ask those control room booths. Do you think?
All right, Dr. Roy, come in here.
They all have the thumbs up sign here.
Broadway Roy, John Manelli, our program director. Suddenly our program director, who was busy writing some reports, emerged. But I think they're fake. I mean, you've had implants.
No way. They're the real thing, baby. You can feel. They're soft. Do you want to feel?
Yeah, all right. Come over here. Are they the real thing? We got to see if they're the real thing here.
Of course they're the
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is not really a first, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Here, squeeze them. Those are real. See how soft?
Yeah, I guess they're for real.
Ooh, and they're getting so hard.
I guess they're for real. I guess they're for real.
Well, you're going to have a convert there, I think.
To my dungeon tonight?
In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, it's 7 minutes before 5 o'clock. You can't meet her, George, because she's going back to Hollywood very soon, right?
On Thursday. But he can meet me before then.
Uh-huh. All right, the Prometheus Books is the publisher, and the title of the book is Whips and Kisses, Parting the Leather Curtain. I have reason to believe, based on various things that I've read and people I've interviewed over the years, that there are a lot of people who are caught in a bind, and the bind is this: they have fantasies. They feel guilty about the fantasies. They try to suppress the fantasies. And we are told that that is the worst thing that they could do.
Mm-hmm.
But people are afraid. A husband is afraid to tell a wife is afraid to tell a husband, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. They're afraid, what will he think of me? But your advice is, and I'm talking about people in monogamous relationships. Would you advise them to tell their mate about their fantasy, whatever it may be?
Yeah, I do. I write a column in the LA Express every week. Oh, here we go. And Chic,
Don't forget Chic, yeah.
Chic magazine as well. And that's one of the #1 questions. How do I tell my partner? I mean, technically, I shouldn't exist. People should not have to come to me to fulfill their fantasy and then go have sex somewhere else. It should be all together. I always tell people to try and communicate. But one of the things is that a lot of people feel so uncomfortable. Like in the past, before I came out of the club, maybe I'd say to my boyfriend, why don't you spank me? Why don't you spank me? And my face would turn red, and I'd feel like an idiot, and he'd say, ugh, what's that? You have to feel comfortable. You have to approach it lightly and maybe gradually. Maybe tie your wife up a little bit with just very little silk scarves if you like bondage, and then say, honey, why don't you do it to me too? You have to approach it very slowly, and you also have to have confidence in it yourself and feel okay and comfortable. That's where seeing a professional can come into play. Now, on the other hand, I do know of some clients who have shared this with their wives. Their wives really don't like it, want to have nothing to do with that. I try to counsel both the couples. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes the wife will give the husband permission to go and see a dominatrix then.
What about you mentioned couples. What about couples? Do couples ever come to you to do a scene?
Yes, they do. Sometimes it's where they already play together, like a dominant woman, and I will dominate her submissive. I had one case, though, a couple in Vegas. He was really into the scene. He liked to get dressed up. He liked to be tied up, and he liked nipple clamps. Basically, that was it. He used to play with his wife years ago. Then they had kids, and they gave it up. One time I came to Vegas, I saw him, and he told her. She did not run to the divorce courts, but wasn't happy. I sat down with the two of them, and I told her about how much fun it could be. Now, he liked to dress up, so I said, well, why don't you just put him in a maid's uniform on Saturday when the kids are out playing baseball, and he'll clean the house. She began to love it. She saw where she could have some fun in this scene, too. All I want people to do is have a good time and express themselves.